Rowan Hart had lived most of his life far from town, high in the quiet mountains where the wind moved through the pine trees like a low whistle. People in town often talked about him as if he were a legend, a giant cowboy with broad shoulders, a deep voice, and a calm strength that made horses listen to him with one look. Even though many feared his size, Rowan never harmed anyone. He simply preferred his peace, his ranch, and the company of animals, who did not judge him unfairly. That late afternoon, as the sky turned orange and the first cold wind of evening rolled across the land, Rowan was checking the fence line between his property and the steep rocky hills. He moved slowly, carrying heavy tools with ease. Everything felt normal until he heard a sound that didn't belong to the mountains, a soft cry, weak and shaky, like someone calling for help but unable to raise their voice. Rowan froze and listened again. The cry returned, this time followed by a small slide of rocks somewhere above. Instantly alert, Rowan climbed the slope, pushing aside bushes and stepping around sharp stones. He reached a narrow path where the dirt looked freshly disturbed, as if someone had slipped there. That was when he saw her. A young woman lay partly hidden behind a fallen branch, one arm scraped, her ankle twisted at an odd angle. She was tall, taller than most women he had ever seen, yet smaller than him. Her long dark hair was tied in a simple braid, though half of it had come loose. Her clothes were dusty, torn at the edges from the fall. Her eyes opened halfway, showing both pain and confusion. Rowan knelt beside her and spoke in his quiet, steady voice. "Don't be scared. I'm here to help." The woman blinked at him, trying to understand where she was and who he might be. She whispered something, but her voice was too weak to make sense. When Rowan gently checked her ankle, she tensed in fear. He paused immediately. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. "You've been injured. Let me help you get to safety." She looked at him for a moment longer, studying his face as if searching for danger. Instead, she saw worry, honest worry for her well-being. Slowly, she nodded. Rowan lifted her carefully, making sure not to move her injured foot too much. She was surprisingly light to him, though he could tell she was strong in her own right. As he carried her down the slope, she clung weakly to his shirt, not out of fear, but because she had no strength left. When they reached his horse, the woman tried to sit by herself but winced in pain. Rowan steadied her gently before climbing up behind her to guide the horse home. They rode slowly toward his ranch. The wind grew colder, and Rowan noticed her shiver. Without a word, he draped his heavy coat around her shoulders. By the time they reached the ranch house, the sun had disappeared behind the mountains. Rowan carried her inside and placed her on the long wooden bench near the fire. His home was simple, a sturdy cabin, clean and warm, with wide windows and a scent of pine wood from the fire. He brought water, bandages, and a soft blanket. The woman tried to sit up straighter, showing a sense of pride even through her exhaustion. "What's your name?" Rowan asked gently. "Ilara," she whispered. Her voice trembled but was clear enough. Rowan smiled slightly. "I'm Rowan Hart. You're safe here." She looked around the room, confused about her surroundings but too tired to ask questions. Rowan carefully cleaned the scrape on her arm and wrapped her ankle. Every time she flinched, he slowed his movements until she could relax again. After a while, Ilara finally spoke. "My group. I was with them. Then, the ground slid. I fell. I don't know where they are." Rowan nodded. "The hills have been unstable lately. It's easy to lose your footing." "9, 9, 9, 9. Her eyes filled with worry. "Will they think I—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Will they think I disappeared? Forever?" "Not if I help you find them once you're strong enough to travel," Rowan said. "But right now, you need rest. You won't be able to walk on that ankle for a while." Ilara lowered her gaze, not liking the idea of depending on a stranger. Rowan understood that feeling. He had been guarded too. Once, He stepped back to give her space. "I'll cook something," he said. "You need food." While Rowan prepared a simple stew over the fire, he kept an eye on her. She looked uncomfortable, not because of pain, but because of uncertainty. She sat stiffly, her hands clasped around the blanket as if unsure whether she was truly safe. Rowan respected her caution. When he brought the bowl to her, she hesitated before accepting it. The warmth of the food and the quiet comfort of the room slowly eased her fear. After eating a few bites, she looked at Rowan again. This time, with a heart trying to understand rather than protect itself. "You helped me even though you don't know who I am," she said softly. "You were hurt," Rowan replied. "That's all I needed to know." For the first time, a small smile touched her face. But far away beyond the quiet of Rowan's ranch, the same mountains that had injured her were stirring another kind of trouble. Rumors were already spreading in town. A giant woman from a nomadic group had been taken by Rowan Hart. Some said he found her wandering. Others said he captured her. The stories grew with each retelling. Rowan did not know any of this yet. Neither did Alara. But the misunderstanding was rising like a storm, ready to fall on both of them. As night settled over the ranch, the fire crackled gently, and Alara finally fell asleep on the bench, wrapped in the blanket. Rowan watched her for a moment, making sure she was resting before quietly stepping outside to check on the animals and prepare a place for her to sleep more comfortably. The moon rose high, shining silver over the land. Rowan stood outside, breathing in the cool air, thinking about the unexpected turn his evening had taken. End quote. He had always lived alone, choosing peace over trouble. But tonight, fate had placed someone, injured and frightened, in his care. He didn't know her story fully, she didn't know his, and neither of them knew that their lives were about to become tangled in ways neither expected. For now, Rowan only knew one thing. He would protect her until she healed, no matter what rumors or strangers came knocking at his door. Rowan checked on Alara early the next morning, long before the sun had fully risen. The cabin was still quiet, except for the soft crackling of the fire he had kept burning through the night. Alara was awake, though her eyes were tired, and she looked as if she had spent the whole night thinking instead of resting. She sat with the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders, her ankle resting carefully on a folded cloth. Rowan greeted her gently. "Morning. You feeling any better?" Alara nodded slowly, though her face showed she was trying to hide her discomfort. "A little. Thank you. For last night." "You don't need to thank me," Rowan said, as he placed a wooden cup of warm tea on the table beside her. "You were hurt. Anyone would have done the same." But Alara knew that wasn't true. Not everyone helped strangers, especially strangers from a misunderstood group like hers. Still, she kept that thought to herself. Rowan noticed the stiffness in her shoulders and sensed her unease. She was sitting in his cabin, unable to walk on her own, surrounded by unfamiliar land and unfamiliar silence. Even though he meant no harm, she felt trapped by her own weakness. Rowan respected those feelings, so he gave her space and spoke gently. "Your ankle will take time to heal," he said. "I'll help you move if you need. You're safe here, but you don't have to stay inside all day. I can bring a chair outside, if you want some fresh air." Alara looked surprised at his kindness. "You don't mind?" Rowan shook his head. "Not at all." He carried her outside, holding her carefully so she did not put weight on her injured foot. She didn't want to seem helpless, so she tried to help him by balancing her weight. But Rowan carried her as if she weighed nothing at all. The morning breeze brushed against her face as she sat on the wooden chair near the porch. The ranch stretched out before her fields of tall grass, wooden fences, a barn, and a few horses grazing calmly. Everything was peaceful. She breathed slowly, letting the quiet calm her. Rowan continued with his chores, fixing a loose fence post and pouring feed for the horses. Every few moments, he glanced toward Alara, to make sure she was comfortable. "Ilara," Rowan called softly. "If you need anything, just say so." She nodded, grateful but unsure how to express it. As Rowan worked, Ilara watched him. His movements were steady and careful. Even though he was large and strong, he moved with surprising gentleness, patting a horse's neck softly, checking each latch on the fencing, lifting heavy sacks like they weighed almost nothing. She felt a strange mix of gratitude and confusion. Why was he helping her without expecting anything in return? But as the sun climbed higher, Ilara's thoughts grew heavier. She stared down at her injured ankle and spoke quietly, almost to herself. "I shouldn't be here this long. My group might think something terrible happened." Rowan paused his work and came closer. "When your ankle gets better, I'll help you find them. But you can't rush healing. If you try to walk too soon, you'll get worse." "I know," she whispered. "But staying here, what will people think?" Rowan noticed the fear hidden beneath her words, fear of misunderstanding, fear of being judged, fear of losing her reputation. He sat on the porch steps, leaving a respectful distance. "I'm not keeping you here. I want you to be well enough to leave safely. That's the only reason." Ilara looked at him, wondering if he truly meant it. His calm eyes told her he did. But the real trouble was not with Rowan. It was with the world outside. In town earlier that morning, whispers had grown louder. Some men claimed Rowan had taken a bride from the nomadic group. Others claimed Ilara was a captive. No one knew the truth. But the rumor spread quickly. The town had always been uneasy about Rowan's size and strength. They often judged him without knowing him. Now, this rumor only made their fears stronger. Back at the ranch, Rowan sensed none of this yet. He only felt the heavy silence between him and Ilara that came from unspoken worries. Later in the afternoon, Rowan brought her lunch, simple bread and vegetables. Ilara thanked him quietly, then hesitated before asking something that had been weighing on her mind. "You said the people around here might misunderstand. How bad is it?" Rowan took a deep breath. He didn't want to scare her. "People in town talk more than they should. Most don't know me very well. They make stories sometimes." Ilara frowned. "Stories? About you?" Rowan nodded. "About my size. About me living alone. Some of those stories aren't kind." A thoughtful silence followed. Ilara understood better now why Rowan had seemed gentle yet distant when she first woke. He wasn't just lonely. He had learned to protect his peace by keeping his distance from others. "Rowan," she said softly, "I don't believe those stories. You saved me." He looked away for a moment, not knowing how to respond to her sincerity. As evening approached, Rowan helped her back inside. She was leaning against him slightly, careful not to touch too much, but grateful for the support. Inside the cabin, she sat near the fire again. Rowan sat across the room, fixing a saddle strap, but glancing at her every few minutes. "Ilara," he said in his quiet voice, "you don't need to be afraid of being here. I won't make you do anything you don't want. You're free to leave once you're healed enough." She looked into the fire, her expression full of mixed emotions. "I'm not afraid of you," she said softly. "I'm afraid of what others will think." Rowan understood more than she realized. People had judged him his whole life. He hated the idea of someone else suffering because of him. "You didn't ask for this," Rowan said gently. "Neither of us did. But we'll face whatever comes, one step at a time." Just then, a distant sound echoed through the mountains, the noise of several horses approaching. Rowan stood slowly, listening. The sound grew clearer. Ilara's eyes widened. "Is it my people?" she whispered. Rowan wasn't sure, but he sensed trouble. Whoever was coming wasn't arriving quietly. Ilara clutched the blanket tightly. She wasn't ready to face anyone. Not with her swollen ankle. not with the confusion surrounding her situation, and not with the rumors she feared might already be spreading. Rowan moved to the window and looked out carefully. Dust rose from the trail. At least 4 riders were coming straight toward the ranch. Ilara's heartbeat quickened. "They think you're keeping me here," she said, in a small voice. Rowan looked at her with calm determination. "Then we'll tell them the truth." But the worry in her eyes said she wasn't sure the truth would be enough. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder, shaking the quiet ground around the ranch. Rowan stood ready not to fight, but to protect the woman he never meant to endanger. The misunderstanding that had been growing outside their knowledge was about to arrive at their door. Rowan stood by the window as the riders drew closer, their silhouettes becoming clearer against the settling afternoon light. Ilara watched him nervously, her fingers gripping the blanket as if it were the only thing holding her steady. Her heart pounded with fear, not fear of Rowan, but fear of what misunderstandings might follow. She knew her people were protective. If they believed she had been taken or mistreated, they would charge in without listening to a single word. Rowan understood this too, though he didn't show worry on his face. Instead, he stepped away from the window and turned to Ilara with a calm voice. "Stay here. I'll talk to them first." Ilara hesitated. "Rowan, they won't understand. They don't know you, like I do now." He met her eyes gently. "Then we'll make them understand together. But you shouldn't try to walk. Nowhere 40, nowhere 42. Your ankle won't hold." The hoofbeats grew louder, stopping right outside the ranch. Rowan stepped outside, closing the door behind him, but leaving it slightly open in case Ilara needed to listen. She leaned forward, worry tightening her chest. Outside, 4 riders dismounted quickly. They were tall, strong, and dressed in travel-worn clothing that marked them as members of her nomadic group. Their expressions were sharp, filled with anger and suspicion. The tallest among them, a man with long dark hair tied back tightly, took a step forward. "You," he said in a low voice. Rowan stood firm. "She's inside. Safe." "Safe?" Another man repeated angrily. "We found tracks. We saw signs of a struggle. And you brought her here alone." Rowan's jaw tightened. "There was no struggle. She fell. I helped her. She's injured." The tallest man narrowed his eyes. "You expect us to believe that? A woman disappears? And she just happens to end up with you? Alone? At your ranch?" Rowan didn't react with anger. He simply shook his head. "Believe what you want. But I didn't harm her. She needs rest and healing. Nothing more." Inside the cabin, Ilara forced herself to stay seated, despite the urge to hobble outside and defend him. She wanted to speak up, but fear held her still. Not fear of Rowan, but fear of saying the wrong thing at the wrong moment. Her people were already tense. One wrong word could spark trouble between them and Rowan. Outside, the men stepped closer to Rowan, forming a half-circle around him. Rowan stood his ground, calm, but ready to protect Ilara if he had to. "We're taking her back," one of them said. "Now." "She can't walk," Rowan replied simply. "Her ankle is badly swollen. You'll hurt her more if you try to move her right now." "We'll carry her," the tall man snapped. Rowan's voice softened. "Then ask her. She'll tell you herself." Saying. The men paused at that. They exchanged glances, uncertain. If Rowan were hiding something, he wouldn't so easily allow them to speak to her. Inside, Ilara decided she couldn't stay silent any longer. She pushed herself up, using the armrest for balance, and made her slow way toward the door. She opened it carefully and leaned against the frame. "Stop," she called out. All 4 men turned quickly. Their expressions shifted the moment they saw her. "Ilara," the tallest man said, rushing toward her. "Are you hurt? Did he—" "No," she interrupted firmly. "Rowan helped me. I fell from the hillside. He saved me. The men froze at her words. Their anger faded slightly, replaced by confusion. Ilara continued, her voice steady, despite her trembling leg. I couldn't walk. I still can't. Rowan brought me here because it was the closest safe place. He gave me food, warmth, and treated my wounds. He never forced me to stay. I stayed because I needed to heal. Rowan stayed silent, allowing her to speak for herself. The men exchanged glances again. Their suspicion not fully gone, but weakened. Why didn't you send word? One of them asked softly. I couldn't, Ilara said. I was unconscious when he found me, and when I woke, I couldn't even stand up. The tall man looked at Rowan again, his voice softer than before. So you helped her? And you didn't try to claim her? Rowan shook his head. I never claimed anything. She's free to leave when she's strong enough. I just didn't want her to get hurt again. Ilara felt a deep warmth in her chest at his words. The tension slowly eased. The men stepped back, their weapons lowered, their shoulders relaxing. We misjudged, the tallest man admitted. The rumors in town made things sound worse. Rowan sighed quietly. I figured rumors had something to do with it. Ilara moved carefully back inside, her ankle aching from standing. Rowan followed her to make sure she didn't fall, while the men stayed outside discussing what to do next. Ilara sat on the bench again, feeling exhausted but relieved. Thank you, she whispered as Rowan helped her settle. You didn't have to speak for me, Rowan replied gently. Yes, I did, she said. You protected me. I won't let people think wrongly about you. For a moment, they looked at each other, understanding passing quietly between them. Later, the men entered the cabin with calm expressions. The tall one spoke respectfully. Ilara, we'll camp nearby tonight. When you're ready to return, we'll take you. But until then, we won't interfere with your care. Ilara nodded, grateful for their patience. Thank you. I just need a few more days. Rowan didn't say much, but his relief was clear. The danger had passed for now. After the men left to set up their camp at a distance, the cabin grew quiet again. Rowan lit the lantern and prepared dinner. Ilara watched him with thoughtful eyes. You didn't raise your voice, she said suddenly. Even when they accused you. Rowan shrugged. Getting angry wouldn't help. What mattered was you being safe and telling the truth yourself. Ilara felt something shift inside her, something warm, steady, and unexpected. She had been afraid of him when she first woke up in his cabin. Now, she felt safer here than she had in many places before. Night settled outside, and the firelight filled the room with a soft glow. Rowan repaired a piece of tack while Ilara rested. The tense morning felt far away now, replaced with something calm and delicate between them. She watched Rowan silently, noticing the patience in his hands and the quiet strength in his eyes. Rowan, she said softly, I'm glad it was you who found me. He paused, looking at her with a gentle expression. I'm glad I found you too. They shared a quiet moment, an unspoken trust forming between them. Neither of them knew it yet. But this simple understanding would shape the days to come, days where they would grow closer, learn from each other, and face the world's misunderstandings together. For now, though, the ranch was peaceful again, and for the first time since her fall, Ilara felt truly safe. Rowan woke early the next morning, long before the first light touched the mountains. He stepped outside quietly to let Ilara sleep. The air was cool, fresh, and still, but something felt different. He sensed that the calm wouldn't last. Yesterday's visit from her people had eased some of the tension, but rumors in town did not die so easily. He knew that whispers could twist into something dangerous if left unchecked. Ilara woke a little later, her ankle still swollen, but slightly less painful than the day before. She pushed herself up carefully, wincing only a little. Rowan returned with warm tea and set it beside her. "How's the ankle?" he asked politely. "Still sore," she admitted, "but better than yesterday." She took the tea, and Rowan sat near the fire, keeping a respectful distance while still close enough to help if she needed anything. For a few minutes, the silence between them was comfortable, but Alara could feel something heavy on Rowan's mind. He wasn't as calm and steady as usual. His jaw was set, his eyes thoughtful. "Rowan," she said quietly. He didn't deny it. "Your people believed the truth yesterday. But the town, that's another story." Alara frowned. "What do you mean?" "There were already rumors," Rowan explained. "Now that your people showed up here, those rumors might get worse." Alara felt a knot forming in her stomach. The idea that strangers could twist her situation into something shameful frightened her. She didn't want her name tarnished, and she definitely didn't want people to think Rowan had done anything wrong. Before she could respond, the sound of horses reached them again. Rowan and Alara exchanged a tense look. Rowan stood quickly and went outside. This time, it wasn't her people. It was men from town, 3 of them. They were not as angry as the nomadic group had been, but their expressions carried distrust. The oldest among them, Mr. Bryan, the general store owner, cleared his throat. "Morning, Rowan. We need a word." Rowan didn't hide the tension in his posture. "About what?" "About the girl you brought here," Bryan said. "There's talk going around that you've kept her against her will." Rowan kept calm. "She fell. I rescued her. That's the truth." Another man, younger and sharper-eyed, spoke up. "People say her group came last night to take her back. That they were angry. Looks mighty suspicious." Rowan's voice stayed level. "They were angry because of rumors. She told them the truth herself." Alara heard the voices from inside and slowly moved toward the door. She opened it carefully and leaned on the frame. "That's enough," she said softly. The 3 men turned in surprise. Alara stood tall, despite her injury, the blanket around her shoulders, and her eyes calm but determined. "I stayed because I was injured," she said clearly. "Rowan took care of me. He never forced me to stay. Never touched me without reason. Never raised his voice." Bryan blinked, embarrassed. "Well, we didn't know for sure. Folks worry." Alara shook her head gently. "Worry is fine. Accusing someone without knowing is not." The young man looked uncertain now. "So you're saying everything's fine?" "Yes," Alara replied firmly. "And if I could walk, I would have come into town myself to say it." Rowan watched her silently, a calm pride in his eyes. The men shifted awkwardly. "Well, then we'll leave it be," Bryan said, finally. They rode away, leaving dust behind them. Rowan exhaled slowly, the tension leaving his shoulders. Alara watched the men disappear down the trail. Inside, Rowan guided her back to her seat. Alara lowered herself gently, her face thoughtful. "I didn't want to cause trouble for you," she whispered. "You didn't," Rowan said softly. "People just see what they want to see." Alara looked down at her hands. "But I want them to see the truth." Rowan sat on the edge of the table near her, not too close, not too far. "They did today. Because of you." For a moment, they simply looked at each other. A quiet understanding grew between them, stronger than before. Later that afternoon, Alara asked Rowan to take her outside again. The sunshine warmed her skin and lifted her spirits. Rowan set up a small wooden stool for her near the porch railing. She watched him work nearby, fixing a broken wheel, carrying firewood, tending to the horses. He didn't need to speak much. His actions spoke louder than any words could. "Alara," Rowan called gently as he tightened a strap on a harness. "You're healing well. Maybe in a few days you'll be ready to travel." Her heart tightened. "Does that mean you want me to leave soon?" Rowan froze. He had not expected that question. "I want you to heal safely. When you're strong enough, you should decide for yourself." Elara lowered her gaze. She didn't know why his answer stung a little. But it did. She wasn't ready to think about leaving yet. Not because she was injured, but because she was starting to feel comfortable here in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. When evening arrived, the sky painted itself in gold and soft purple. Rowan sat near her on the porch, not touching her, but close enough that she felt his presence like a warm shield. "You protected me again today," Elara said softly. Rowan glanced at her, surprised. "You protected me too." Elara smiled a little. "People think you're dangerous, Rowan, but you're the safest person I've been around." Rowan's heart tightened at her words. He didn't respond quickly. Instead, he looked out over the ranch, where the horses were settling down. "Elara," he said quietly, "I don't want to make decisions for you. Not now. Not ever. Whatever you choose, stay, leave, return to your people. It must always be your choice." Her chest warmed at the sincerity in his tone. He wasn't trying to keep her. He wasn't trying to claim her like the rumors suggested. He simply cared. As darkness fell around them, the lantern on the porch flickered softly. The night felt quiet, almost protective. Elara leaned back against the chair and breathed deeply. Rowan remained beside her, peaceful and steady. For the first time since her fall, Elara realized something important. She wasn't afraid of being misunderstood anymore. She wasn't afraid of the rumors. She wasn't even afraid of the future. She was only afraid of one thing: leaving this quiet ranch and losing the gentle safety that Rowan had given her without ever asking for anything in return. And Rowan, though silent, was beginning to feel the same. Their hearts were changing quietly, like the slow shift of mountains, steady, powerful, and impossible to ignore. Elara woke on the 5th morning with a strange mix of calm and heaviness in her heart. Her ankle still ached, but the swelling had gone down. She could move it a little without sharp pain. When she tried gently touching her foot to the floor, she felt pressure uncomfortable, but not unbearable. She knew what that meant. She was getting better. Soon she would be able to travel again. Soon she would have to decide where she truly belonged. Rowan was outside splitting wood when she stepped out onto the porch with the help of a small wooden cane he had made for her. He turned the moment he heard the door open. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her standing on her own, even just for a moment. "You shouldn't be walking yet," he said softly, setting the axe aside. "I'm trying," Elara replied with a small smile, leaning on the cane. "I need to see how strong it is now." Rowan walked closer, not touching her but staying near in case she lost her balance. "If it hurts too much, sit down. Don't force it." She nodded. But her eyes carried something more than physical determination. Something deeper. Something Rowan didn't fully understand yet, but could feel. He moved a chair closer to her, and she eased into it with a quiet sigh. Rowan studied her face. She looked thoughtful, almost sad. Not because of pain, but because of the passing days. "Your people will want to know you're healing," Rowan said carefully. "I can send word to them today." Elara lowered her gaze. "And then what?" Rowan paused. "Then, when you're ready, they'll take you home." The silence that followed felt heavy. Elara stared at the horizon where the sun was climbing slowly over the mountains, turning the world gold. Rowan followed her gaze, though he couldn't read her thoughts. After a long pause, she whispered, "Rowan, do you want me to leave?" Do you want me to leave?" The question struck him deeper than he expected. Rowan's hands tightened slightly around the back of her chair. He took a breath before answering, his voice steady but soft. "I want you to be free," he said. "Not trapped here because of fear or injury. When you're strong enough, the choice should be your own." Her heart squeezed at his words. "But what if my choice is not what people expect?" Rowan's eyes met hers. "Then people can learn to accept it." Elara's throat tightened. She looked away, blinking. Rowan didn't push further. He simply sat beside her, gazing at the mountains they both loved. The morning passed quietly, filled with unspoken thoughts. Later, Ilara's people came to check on her. They stood at a respectful distance now, no longer suspicious. The tall man, her cousin, asked how she felt. She told him honestly that she was healing well, but still needed a bit more time before traveling. He nodded, trusting her words. "We will leave today," he said. "But we'll return in 2 days to escort you home when you're ready." Ilara nodded politely, even though the words tightened something in her chest. She watched her people ride off, the dust rising behind them. Rowan stood quietly at her side, not commenting on the exchange. When the riders disappeared over the hill, Ilara finally exhaled. 2 days, she murmured. That's not much time. Rowan looked down at his hands. Time goes fast when you don't want it to. She turned her face toward him, surprised by the softness in his voice. Rowan rarely spoke such honest words. It warmed her deeply. Inside the cabin, they spent the day quietly. Rowan repaired tools in the corner. Ilara watched him, her thoughts tangled like threads she couldn't separate. She had traveled with her group for years, living a life full of movement. Yet none of those places had ever felt like home the way this mountain ranch did. The calm, the warmth, the way Rowan cared without asking, they had changed something inside her. By evening, the golden light returned, spilling across the wooden floor. Rowan made dinner. Simple, but warm. They ate together, talking about small things, her memories from traveling, his stories about the ranch, little moments that made them laugh. When night came, Rowan walked her to the porch again. The lantern glowed softly, and the stars were bright above them. The mountains stood silent and endless. "Ilara," Rowan said quietly, "your strength's coming back. You'll be able to ride soon." She swallowed. "I know." He hesitated, then added, "You deserve to be with your people again." She shook her head slowly. "Rowan. But no one is asking where I want to be." Rowan's breath caught in his chest. He didn't expect those words. "Where do you want to be?" he asked softly. Ilara looked at him, her eyes steady and clear. Rowan froze. He didn't move. He didn't even breathe for a moment. "Ilara, don't say that because you feel grateful, or pressured, or I'm saying it because it's true." She interrupted gently. "When I fell from that hillside, I thought I would die. When I woke in your cabin, I was scared. Not of you, just of being helpless. But every day here, I felt safe. I felt seen. I felt at peace. More than anywhere else, I've traveled." Rowan looked away, trying to steady his emotions. "But your people." Ilara shook her head. "They want me to be happy, and I'm happiest here." Rowan's voice was almost a whisper. "You're sure?" Ilara nodded. "Yes, I don't want to leave. Not because I can't travel, but because staying here feels right." Rowan finally met her gaze. His eyes held a mixture of disbelief, gratitude, and something deeper, something he'd kept hidden for days. "Ilara, if you stay here, it must be your choice. Not because anyone told you to. Not because of rumors. Not because of fear." She smiled softly. "I choose this place. I choose peace. And I choose to stay near the man who protected me when no one else could." Rowan's chest felt warm, almost too full. He lowered his head for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he looked up, his voice was gentle. "Then stay," he said. "Not as someone trapped here. Not as someone others misunderstand. Stay as someone who belongs here. By her own will. Stay. Also, Andister Bell. Well, he belongs is. Andister Bell." Ilara's smile widened, slow and full of quiet joy. The lantern light reflected in her eyes. The mountains stood steady behind them, like witnesses to a new beginning. She leaned back in her chair, feeling the cool night breeze brush her skin. Rowan sat beside her, closer than before, but still respectful. For the first time since her fall, Ilara felt her heart settle in a place that wasn't just safe, it was home. And Rowan, who had lived many years in silence and isolation, finally felt the presence of someone who chose him freely, without fear, without pressure, without misunderstanding. That night, two quiet souls sat together under the mountain sky, knowing that their lives had changed forever, not through force, not through rumor, but through choice, trust, and a bond that grew gently, day by day.